us tonight. It's Mark Guzdial!
I have to keep up with those expectations now. Hi, I'm a computing education researcher. I study how people come to understand computing and how we can make it better. I'm also the director of the program in computing for the arts and sciences. So I am trying to help arts, science, and humanities students learn about computing. And it's a very different thing than in information or computer science. We don't have majors, we're not producing people who are going to go off into the tech industry. We're helping people who are going to do other things, but they're going to need computing. Now, that may seem like a crazy idea today, but it's actually a pretty old idea, and I want to tell you that story. So in 1961, the MIT Sloan School held a symposium, Computers in the World of the Future. Martin Greenberger wrote this book about it the next year. It has all of the quotes from all of the lectures and all the discussants' comments. And two of the speakers in this session made the argument that we should be teaching computer science to absolutely everybody and that everyone should learn programming on every campus. One of those two speakers was Alan Perlis. In the computer science, we don't have a Nobel Prize, we have the ACM Turing Award. And Alan Perlis won the very first ACM Turing Award. And he made the argument that everyone on every campus should learn how to program because programming changes the way we understand. He told the story of then at Carnegie Tech of how business management folks were starting to do simulations of economics to ask questions that made economics into an experimental science. In general, economists don't go around like, hey, let's devalue the dollar amount just to see what happens. But when you have a simulation, you can. And so Perlis was really foreshadowing computational science and computational engineering in 1961. To give a contrast, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates were born the same year. They're 6 at the time of this. Another one of the speakers is better known for writing this book, C.P. Snow's The Two Cultures. C.P. Snow was a scientific advisor to the British government during World War II, and where Perlis sees, wow, computing gives us all these new insights into the world. Snow was really worried. In 1961, he foreshadowed that computer science was going to take over everything. And he was really worried that if people didn't know about programming, if they didn't know about computer science, they wouldn't know to ask the questions that would keep it under control, that would keep it under the control of democracy. Snow wrote, a handful of people having no relation to the will of society, having no communication with the rest of society, will be taking decisions in secret which are going to affect our lives in the deepest sense. Kind of prescient for 1961 for how the world works today. 6 years later, another ACM Turing Award winner, the Dutch computer scientist Peter Naur, made a very similar argument that we should teach everybody about programming and about computer science. And his argument was, well, he directly links it to democracy. He says teaching computer science to everybody is a necessary condition for humankind's supremacy over computers and for ensuring that their use do not become a matter for a small group of experts, but become a usual democratic matter. And thus, the democratic system will lie where it should with all of us. So if we were to think about this argument that Naur and Snow are making, that we got to know about the technology in order to be able to ask the right questions about it. The technology that we would all probably think about today is AI. What is AI doing? Is AI a threat to democracy? And what should we be knowing about AI? Or should we not even worry about programming computers anymore? Because can't ChatGPT just do it for us? What's really amazing is that this particular argument got raised back in 1961 after Alan Perlis' lecture. So Peter Elias, the chair of electrical engineering at MIT, he did not want to have anything to do with Perlis' idea of teaching everybody programming. He says, it sounds to me as though Perlis would have programming assume a large role in the curriculum. Well, I should hope that it would have disappeared from the curriculum. And then Elias goes further to basically predict ChatGPT. Succeeding undergraduates will face the console with such a natural keyboard and such a natural language, there'll be very little left, if anything, to the teaching of programming. Pretty amazing. Okay, so Perlis pushes back and says, look, it's about science. And science isn't about producing software, it's about producing understanding. And the point of teaching scientists about programming is to give them the ability to model the world on the computer, to be able to break down their theories into things that can be put into processes in order to be able to understand them better. I love his argument. But I loved even better J.C.R. Licklider's argument. He's the other discussant, along with Peter Elias. Now, whether you think that Vint Cerf or Al Gore was the father of the internet, J.C.R. Licklider was the grandfather of the internet. It was his idea, and when he went to DARPA, he funded the creation of the internet. So J.C.R. Licklider responds to Peter Elias saying, Pete, I think the first apes who tried to talk with one another decided that learning language was a dreadful bore. They hoped that a few apes would work the thing out so the rest of us could avoid the bother. But some people write poetry in the language we speak. Perhaps better poetry will be written in the language of digital computers of the future than has ever been written in English. I love this idea that computing gives us new ways of communicating, that maybe the code could be poetry, or maybe we're going to use computers to say things like Monsters, Inc. and Finding Nemo, that Pixar has created a new kind of expression that we couldn't do before we had computers. So last semester, I taught a class with Steve Abney, a computational linguist, for arts and humanities students to explain generative AI to them. We in particular were trying to make a contrast between human and artificial intelligence. We named the class Alien Anatomy, how ChatGPT works. As the education researcher on the team, it was my job to explain how humans work, and in particular to create a contrast in how humans develop versus how ChatGPT is developed. So Jean Piaget was one of the scientists who studied how children develop. I mean, one of the things that makes human and ChatGPT different is that humans develop. And as we're developing, we're completely functional, we're reasonable, we're rational, we just don't know things that we're gonna know later. So for example, Jean Piaget pointed out that when a child is playing, that at some point, if the ball, while they're playing with it, rolls underneath the couch, well, they just walk away. Because children often have, at least young children, have a problem with object permanence. Well, if you can't see the object doesn't actually exist. Now, for you and I, we probably can't remember when we had problems with object permanence. So let me give you a more concrete one that you can reason about in terms of what you know and what you know you didn't know. There's nobody in the room right now that can look at this and not see the letter A. But if you think about it, you weren't born knowing that. There was at some point that was two slanty lines and a horizontal line, right? You know that you were totally functional back when you didn't know that this was a letter A. And now you can't help yourself but know the letter A. Now, I'm sure that you can think about not knowing the letter A, but you don't really remember it the same way. And you don't actually have to go all the way back to being a little kid to think about how humans develop and how different that is from how generative AI works. So, excuse me here. I've been studying how to play the ukulele for a few years. And when I first got started, I just used one finger like this each way. And eventually I figured out how to strum. And then eventually I learned sitting on the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll away. Sitting on the dock of the bay, wasting time. So ChatGPT can't reason about, I used to be able to do this, and then I was able to do this, and now I'm able to do this. ChatGPT doesn't get cognitively overwhelmed. What I just did for you, that is the hardest thing I know how to do. To remember the chords, remember the words, play the notes, sing the words, and do it in front of an audience. ChatGPT can also never know the exhilaration of performing in front of an audience. We have to know about the limitations of the technology that is in our lives. It's important for us to be able to understand it and to reason about it in order to keep it as a usual democratic matter. Thanks very much.